Alright guys, what's up? George back here again, and we're going to dig into the wiring on the Daytona today. I've already started pulling the dash harness. Reason why I started with the dash is there's some cut wires on the harnesses going in the car. I wanted to find out what those were before I got too far along in case it was a situation where I couldn't use that dash harness because of the wires that were cut. Turns out it's the ignition switch wires. I must have just cut those because I didn't want to drop the column or something. I don't even know why I would have cut those, but I did. I didn't want to get into pulling the engine harness, unplugging everything, get into the car, find out I can't use the dash harness, and now I've got the whole wiring exploded out of the car. So I'll show you what I've already done, and then we will continue pulling the dash out. Okay, so what I've done so far is this is the firewall bulkhead, and it has this long bolt. The dash side of it actually goes through that hole, and then this pushes onto it, and you tighten the bolt down to seal them together. There's like a little foam gasket there. This butts up against the firewall. So I undid that first, and then moved into the car, and the way that works, get in the car here, is that big gray connector on the left is the connection for the body harness. So that's the wires that run back to like the fuel pump and everything else. Then you have another gray connector kind of in the back there. That's the steering column harness. So the turn signal switch and all that. So I've got to pull the center console out. The logic module in the footboard is actually attached to the engine harness. So I'll unplug that, but it won't come out with the dash. Then there'll be another body connection on the passenger side. Hold on, let me let this ambulance pass. Okay, so now that that's passed, the logic module is not connected. There's going to be another body harness connection in that footwell, so I will have to pull the computer out. Just it won't come out with the dash. Then just like get the dash unbolted, which has got a bracket on each side, and then there's like a top piece that pulls out, and there's some bolts hidden behind that, and I'm hoping that I pull the whole dash as one unit. So I'm going to start pulling that stuff, and I will be back in a minute. Okay, so the dash is out. It ended up being 4 bolts across the top and then 1 down at the bottom on each side. I've also already went ahead and stripped the dash. The upper top one is the new harness. Looks like all the plugs will work. So I'm not going to actually show the reassembly of this. I'm just going to jump into doing the engine harness. So I'm going to get started on that right now. Okay, so the engine harness is out of the car. So I'm going to do the reinstallation on camera. I'll show you guys the modifications that I've done after all that stuff is done. But I mean, it's kind of an installation as a reverse of removal. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to some other things, mainly exhaust manifold modifications. So I mentioned in my last video that I had sort of messed one up. I'll show you what I did there. I started drilling the holes out, and as you can see how those are kind of weird shaped. That's because I started drilling the holes out and I had them off the pattern, like they were all off. So what I ended up doing was taking that manifold and actually taking this flange that I cut off of another header project, and I laid that over the top of it and tack welded to the cut off studs exactly where I wanted it, and then was able to use these holes as a drill guide so I could drill and tap the holes, and it worked out well. But I had messed up this one corner so bad that I tried to fill it in, and I just ended up butchering it to the point to where I'm going to start over with this manifold that was in the free parts. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to weld this on where I want it, and then that will give me a drill guide. I will be back in a minute after I weld that on. Okay, so I've got that tacked on to the old stud locations. I originally tried to push it as far down and as far toward the drive, what will be the driver's side of the car, but I realized that this hole was too close to the edge, which is where I think I had issues before. So I cut it off, repositioned it back over. It's about dead center of the existing hole now, and we're going to roll with that as our location. So I'm going to drill these holes out and tap them so we can get the turbo mounted to it. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. Got these drilled out with a 21/64, which is the closest I could find to the metric drill bit that it said I needed for the M10 by 1.5 tap. But that drill bit seemed to work fine when I did it on what's now the test manifold. So I'm going to tap these out now, and I should be able to get the turbo bolted on. Success! I drilled and tapped the manifold. I went ahead and put the extension I had to get onto the wastegate actuator. And I've gotten everything bolted to the head, and I've got just enough room for everything. I do have some interference down here between the exhaust manifold and the intake runner, and that's because there's two different styles of exhaust manifold. One of them has a notch to clear that runner. It's used on later style. This one's an early one. So I'm just going to grind some of that original flange off. I don't need that much material now with the new flange that's been drilled out on it. So I'll get that done. I'm going to do a little bit of light cleanup work on the ports on this because I have to port out a couple of other things. And again, I did get the wiring harness out of the car. That will be done between videos. So the next video should be making sure that the head fits on the short block and everything clears there. Hopefully the wiring will be done by then. But I'm going to leave it off here. I will see you guys next week.